Hello, my name is Ben,
And my name is Martin from Soupmasters.
and we are your hosts of the Too Vague podcast this week. One word, two hosts, stories, trivia, and video games. Martin from Sweden, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine.
Excellent.
We just moved into our new offices here in Gothenburg, Sweden. So there's been a lot of things to carry around, but we're finally settling down and we got the heating to work here in cold Sweden.
But more importantly, do you have all your desk tchotchkes all placed where they're supposed to be?
Yeah, it takes a lot of time to get all of that settled in. We actually, Ludvig, the animator, he works on a very big 48-inch television.
Oh, wow.
Which is like right up his face. Yeah, we have to be really careful when moving that one around.
Soupmasters, if you caught my episodes about PAX, I told you about this game that I saw there called Big Boy Boxing, and Martin and Ludvig. I guess you're the main designers for this project, yes?
Yeah, so I'm the main game designer and game director, and Ludvig, which I just referred to, is the main animator and art director.
Okay, and then you have a team of how many people at Soupmasters making this game? Is it just a very small team of like a dozen people, or do you have a larger team? Or
we're currently quite small. Like it's mainly just me and Ludvig, actually, that you can say work full time on the game. However, we do work with like 8, 9, 10 different contractors that helps us with animating the game and doing some code work and stuff like that.
I don't want to get too far in the weeds before we introduce the word, but contracting other people to do certain work like that, is that a common indie game thing, or is that something that's just happened over the course of the last 10 years?
I feel like it's with the climate of having like, it becomes more and more usual to have remote work, working with people like across the world in different time zones.
Yeah.
And then the kind of easiest way to get going is to have like a commission contract based with them instead of having some more formal sort of hiring agreement.
Okay. That's probably another episode entirely, how that stuff works in Sweden as opposed to other countries. But our word this week is the word animate. But before we animate the word animate, I guess, what are you up to? You told us a little bit about what you're up to as far as moving the office and getting all that all settled in. Is there anything that you're doing recently that you're excited about?
Yeah, well, the stuff we're working on when it comes to the animations is super exciting. We're like working on adding even more expressions to the characters in Big Boy Boxing than we even had before. Yeah. So seeing like the progress of that is very satisfying, but the other side of it is also like implementing the animations into the game engine. That has been the biggest time sink I think we've had in the development so far, and we're working on like a very flexible way of handling that moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like really exciting to work on.
Cool. Also, like personally, what games are you most excited about that are coming out that you're playing? As a developer, you've got to be also a fan.
Yes.
I just make the games. I don't play them. I don't know if there are any of those folks out there. But...
Yeah, I have like 3, 4 unopened games that's just waiting for me at home to be played. I just don't have... I'm trying to find some time this weekend, but I know I won't have any time this weekend, unfortunately. So I'll try to find time like next week to play those games. For me, these games haven't released yet because I haven't had the time to check them out. But it's like Super Mario Wonder. It's this new SpiderMan game. It's a Red Dead Redemption 1 also. It's like, I think they remastered it for the PlayStation 4 and 5. So I just saw it on like a store shelf and I was like, wait, that game is available? Like, why haven't I played it? I thought I had to like get a PlayStation 3 to play that or something like that. But
Red Dead Redemption, the first one, right, has one of my favorite bugs. It's got to be a bug where you have the dead eye thing where you slow down time and you can target things. But what you can do is you can manipulate the controls in such a way you engage that slow for example, on a bird, if you switch to a Molotov cocktail or dynamite, and then you turn your body away from the bird and you throw the dynamite, it will like boomerang. it'll go and boomerang into the bird. It looks so ridiculous, but it's so much fun. I remember that's like one of my favorites. Like, this has got to be a bug. Either that or someone saw it and it was, no, we're going to keep it in because it's fun. Okay, so those are your big three that you're excited about. The new Spider-Man 2 is what I'm guessing? Or is it the remaster?
No, it's Spider-Man 2.
I've taken a different route when it comes to pre-ordering, and that, for me, was RoboCop Rogue City. I'm really excited about that. Spider-Man 2, also excited about, but I'm going to wait for it to come out in price. I know it's going to be brilliant coming from Insomniac. They really can do no wrong. Look at their last games. Hit after hit after hit. But yeah, RoboCop Rogue City, that just looks so amazing for such a small team. It just seems like a passion project. Have you heard about that at all, the Rogue City?
I would never have guessed it was developed by a smaller studio. It looks amazing. I got instantly, vibe like cyberpunk vibes, of course. And the gameplay looks really like fun and action-packed. And actually, for a while, like a few years ago, I used to just binge these boomer shooters. And this feels like that type of shooter game where I can just play and have a good time and just, shoot and destroy everything.
Feel almost invincible. I saw a little video snippet where they talked to a developer about this and about how they had to keep in mind that RoboCop is a slow tank-like character, right? So you have to develop the game. It's not like you're running around like a lot of other first-person shooters and going really fast. They have to design the game around the way the character behaves. And that was kind of one of their challenges was this is a slow character and he's going to be slow, but that's part of how you have to balance the game because that's RoboCop. That's the way he is. I am hoping that the hype of the demo that people have said that they're very impressed with this, I hope that's all real. I'll find out. I put in the pre-order, which means I have access to it on October 31st. We'll see. I'm excited about it. Being a fan of the movie, too. The Verhoeven, the original one. The second one was okay, but the first one was just kind of a masterpiece. Were you familiar with that movie, RoboCop?
I've only seen the first one. Actually, I did also see the remake. Like, they made a remake on it.
Yeah.
I actually saw that one first, and then I saw the original.
Which one was your favorite?
The first one.
He asked knowingly.
Yeah.
Watching sort of like the making of RoboCop specials documentaries. There's a Netflix, The Movies That Made Us. There's a really interesting one about RoboCop. Paul Verhoeven, he just tossed it, and his wife read it and said, you should take a look at this. There's something here. Definitely a great movie. The perfect storm of the way it was made. Not for everyone, but what is for everyone. Really excited about that game coming out. I hear Super Mario Wonder is amazing, though, by the way. I hear it is amazing.
I'm very, tempted to go back home and just play it for the entire night. Every time there's, a new, especially, a new Mario 3D game, that's, usually, my favorite game that year. This Super Mario Wonder really seems like... I really like the new Super Mario Bros. Games, they're very nostalgic for me, but personally I think Donkey Kong has been better. Donkey Kong Country Returns is the platform, 2D platformer that I prefer.
Right.
But with this Super Mario Wonder, it really seems like that opinion might change.
Would you consider yourself a Nintendo guy more than another platform? If you had one system that you had to choose between all your systems?
I think if we compare it to the other, the consoles, then I think Nintendo, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But that's also because, Nintendo is, the only platform left with, really exclusive IPs. A lot of these other games are, on, PlayStation and Xbox. They're available on Steam or on PC.
Mm-hmm.
And I prefer to play them there because you can kind of get better performance, better graphics on a PC than you can on a console.
Right.
I do play, like, let's say the new Spider-Man game. I will play that on the PlayStation 5, but I might repurchase it on PC to enjoy later on after I've played the initial hype, so to say.
Yeah. What I do with games is I play them once and then I'll put them away, and it's like I'm looking for the next thing. Franchises are great, but I want unique experiences, and I want something new in general. There are some exceptions, like I am playing God of War Ragnarok right now, a little late, but I'm finally getting to it. It's great, and then also Horizon Forbidden West was amazing. I enjoyed that too, as far as your titles. But those are also, like you said, they're coming out for the PC too lately.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would consider those PlayStation exclusives to a point, whereas Nintendo, there aren't any Nintendo games on Steam, nor will they probably ever be.
I have to say, though, generally, like, I would be more of a PC guy, actually. And like, if you look like beyond consoles, I think I've spent so many countless hours on PC games. Especially, number one is Minecraft. That game is, it's just countless amount of hours in that game. And all because, kind of my career in programming or game development started as creating mods and plugins in Minecraft. So that's really special game for both me and Ludvig, actually, which is the art and animator on Big Boy Boxing.
So is that how you guys met? Was through that community, or were you like lifelong friends? Or
no, we actually met in it's called high school.
Okay.
Like the first time we ever met, we were kind of like, we weren't really friends. Like we both thought like, oh, we're probably never gonna hang ever together. But then we kind of did once, and we started to talk about a game.
Right.
Like a fighting game, and we just bounced off each other's ideas, and then it became a concept, and we developed that concept. And actually, you could say that Big Boy Boxing is the final result of that concept.
You were mentioning that when we were talking about this at the show, there was initially an idea that you had for something that was more of a Super Smash Brothers style game.
Yes. Yeah. And it started on like, we had that Super Smash Bros. Fighter game that in itself had like multiple stages, in its development. And we put a lot of effort into that title, but then we kind of just realized a few years in that we didn't work on it super seriously because we were, still in school.
Right.
But we kind of realized that there is already so many good Super Smash Bros. Inspired titles that we just thought that our title wouldn't really provide anything. We thought our characters were the best part of the game, but we also thought that probably we should choose another type of game to preview the characters in. The Punch-Out kind of formula lends very well to, highlighting as like the opponent.
Right. And it's not one that people have. I mean, I can't think of any other Punch-Out style games right off the bat. That's pretty much a class of its own, and you don't see anything like that that's really inspired by that. I mean, unless I'm wrong, do you know of any other games that are kind of use the Punch-Out presentation?
I've seen a few games doing it, but the most interesting examples of it, I'm going to say two examples, is the game Enter the Gungeon.
Oh, yeah.
It has a rat boss, which is very, or at least to me, clearly inspired by Punch-Out, and I think that's super fun. And another one, which might not be as clear, is Deltarune.
Okay.
It has a fight in Chapter 2 called The Queen. They don't actually box. I think it's more like I think she does some special attacks, and she even kicks you. So it's not, I guess, a real boxing match, but it's still like clearly inspired by the Punch-Out formula, and that's awesome.
Yeah, but what you're doing is more. I mean, it's not like about a single boss fight. It's about doing a spiritual successor, I think. Or at least that's what it feels like to me. It feels like there's more story there. Even in that little bit that I played with the demo, Hank, even just that little bit, it shows that you've got an interesting story to tell. I'm really excited to see the full product once it's finally done. How far into development do you guys think you are now? Do you have like, okay, so it's this percentage done, or is that a moving sort of target?
We do have like a sort of measurement to it, but the problem is like we don't have any, dedicated producer on the project. So it's at times it's better for us to just not plan and just, finish stuff, because it's like doing like a producer role, making everything, planning everything. It takes a lot of time and effort.
Mm-hmm.
And at certain stages, it's super worth it for us to plan things out. But at the moment, we're trying to wrap up the final version of the game with the final version in the sense of like architecturally having a stable final version ready so that we can launch a build of the game with mod support and some more characters.
All of which rely heavily on this week's word, which is animate. And I will leave the Swedish pronunciations and whatnot up to you, but we'll start with the definition. Thanks to Oxford Languages, thank you Google Machine, the word animate, they have two listings here, but they're pronounced two different ways. So let me start with the one that we're going to focus on, which is the word animate, a verb to bring to life, give inspiration, encouragement, or renewed vigor to, give a movie or character the appearance of movement using animation techniques. And then, what's the Swedish translation of animate?
Animera.
Animera. Okay.
That's the Swedish translation.
The second, it has a different pronunciation, but it's spelled the same. Animate. Alive or having life. Lively or active or animated is animate. Is there a translation in Swedish for that? What they have listed here is Levande.
Like levande, it's like alive.
Levande.
Like the living, I guess.
Okay, but we're focusing on the verb definition for our show, but I just thought I would mention that. It's got two different pronunciations in English, but it has two different distinct words in Swedish, which I find interesting. The origin of animate, late Middle English from Latin, animat, instilled with life, from the verb animare, animare. I don't know how to pronounce things I'm just going to say them phonetically. Animare, or at least phonetically in English, and from anima, life and soul. There we go. Martin, what does the word animate mean to you?
The Big Boy Boxing is all about high frame rate animations, that makes the characters feel, the more we animate them, the more they feel like real characters, like a tangible character.
You're bringing them to life.
Exactly. The thing is like we're heavily inspired, of course, by Punch-Out. You can see in that original game. By the way, just, for clarity, like that game is, it's a awesome game, and it's a technical feat of its time. It's a really important game.
Are you talking about the arcade or the Nintendo Entertainment System, or both?
It could possibly also apply to the arcade one, but specifically the NES Mike Tyson one.
Okay.
And the reason is because like the way they displayed such a big moving character, relatively speaking, to the other games on that platform. It's a marvel that they could get the animations to work so fluid in that game. We're trying to basically make the game feel like a moving Disney cartoon. In those like Disney cartoons, they have like, incredibly fluid animations where they're like, it's like 24 frames per second or 25 frames per second. And that means, every second of movie, the animators has to draw 25 distinct images to make that feel like it's a living character.
Yeah.
And we're doing that, but with the kind of extra thing to think about with the, being a video game, it's interactive. We had to make the animations incredibly modular at the same time as making them in high frame rate, which isn't easy.
As it relates to the way big boy boxing looks specifically, when you make those animations, do you do them like a cartoon, like you would do in the old days when you're doing cell after cell, like your traditional animations, and then transfer that to a pixelated look? Or do you do them all in pixels in the computer to begin with? Or is there sort of a process to drawing it, scanning it? Like, what is the process to going from an animated sort of thing that looks like a cartoon to something that looks pixelated?
It's very different from different processes, and even like with different animators that we're working with. When Ludvig does an animation from start to finish by himself, he does that all inside of a sprite. Everything is pixelated from start to finish.
Okay.
But when we work with some other animators that, has less experience with pixel art, but are, really good cartoon animators, then, we let them use the animations that they are familiar with, and then we pixelize them and, make any adjustments that's needed.
Right. Any cleanup or anything.
Exactly. And actually, like, the animators that we're working with has, animated on some of the best animated movies ever made, in my opinion, and I think in a lot of people's opinion. So it's great to have someone like that, interested in our project and working on it.
That's very cool. Are any of them most familiar with flip books?
I'm familiar with flip books, yeah.
I was trying to make a joke there. Like, that's my preferred method of animation, is using a flip book. Did you ever used to do that when in high school? You would, like, in the corner of the textbook, you draw little pictures and then you'd flip them and show a guy shooting another guy or whatever.
Yeah, so yeah, it goes like this. Do you know what I think it's a book. I think it's a movie now as well, but it's called like Captain Underpants.
Captain Underpants.
And they had this like thing called a flip-o-rama, I think it was called. And it's basically like a flip book where you can see like a man, punching like something, and like you would have 2 pages which you flip very fast, and you could see this animation kind of happen. And I remember being inspired by like that book or cartoon, whatever, and I like made my own like basically animations with that method.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with Captain Underpants. Illustrated children's novel series by American author and illustrator Dav Pilkey. Is that what you're talking about?
That is, yeah. That's awesome stuff.
There was also a sequence in the movie Hot Fuzz. Did you ever see the movie Hot Fuzz?
I've seen it multiple times.
Yes, that's a wonderful movie, by the way. It's like my favorite. Edgar Wright. Well, I don't know. Not my... Maybe. Speaking of animations, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, also pretty high up there on my list of his movies. But anyway, Hot Fuzz, the way that when they're talking about using their notebook, and it's like, this is the most important tool that you have.
Yeah.
You should think about using yours. And it's like, oh, I do use mine. And then they do that whole flip book thing. That's hilarious. I giggle at that every time.
It's a genius movie.
Agreed. One of my faves. Is animation mostly Ludvig's thing, or were you an appreciator of animation? When you think of animation, is it more of a hobby, or is it more of you appreciate it for what it is kind of thing? Like you enjoy the craft of someone else doing it? Or do you enjoy doing it yourself?
I don't really enjoy animating myself. It's a lot of things to do. But when it comes to like the directing process of what kind of animation style and what methods we're using, and as well as the tools that we use to animate, is something that I have to handle. But it's definitely something I do appreciate, and like the games I am personally like just drawn towards are the ones that have some very interesting visual style and animation to them.
You said drawn towards. That's pun intended, right?
Drawn, exactly. And one of those games was Cuphead, which was a game like I followed way before it got any attention from the Xbox reveal they did. I just love the idea of making a animated movie into a game.
Mm-hmm.
And another game is Pizza Tower, which like I followed that game also since I think the Sage demo. I followed it like very rigorously, and I just thought that that game looked so well animated, and I love the fluidity and the inspirations that the animations are inspired by. So those types of game is like my jam.
What about Skullgirls? Because I remember when Skullgirls came out, that was another one of it's supposed to look like this old sort of classic animations.
You remember when I said, we made a Super Smash Bros. Type game,
Yeah.
So I just checked out all the fighting games. So so I did try out Skullgirls quite a lot, but it was like I never really got hooked into that game.
Uh-huh.
To have a lot of enjoyment on that game, you probably need to be two people to play it. And I usually just played against bots and play that game for like research purposes. But yeah, the animations are are really well done, and I think they made another game which also was really well animated.
Indivisible. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, yes.
I have it for the PlayStation 4. It's a really cool, well animated game, and it's a fun game to play. It's got an interesting sort of battle system. It's timing based, I guess, not really turn based.
Yeah.
It's a really fun game. If you have a chance to check it out, definitely check it out. You said you did research on fighting games. Did you do research on them's fighting herds? Because talk about unique animations.
I know the game, but I think I checked it out like after our game had already, right about the time we stopped working on that game. No, I actually haven't played that one.
Yeah, the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Apparently, one of the main designer of the show cartoons had some input into the actual new designs when I think it was Hasbro said, cease and desist, we don't want this My Little Pony fighting game. And then Lauren Faust, who was one of the Friendship is Magic animators, she said, hey, let me work on some of the designs and the characters and the stories for this unique group of characters, all hooved animals. But it's a very interesting sort of fighting game. It's a little too juggly for my taste. Like you get the juggle combos and trying to keep people up in the air. As someone who wants to fight against someone, when you're being juggled, it's not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing about developing a fighting game too. Something like a Super Smash Brothers, I would say, is getting that balance right, because some of the most infuriating Super Smash Brothers play sessions I've ever had, I could just put the joystick down and let the guy just finish the juggle move, right, and then pick it back up again. Like that, it's that annoying sometimes.
That was, I think, big reason why we actually moved away from that project, because we wanted to put all our effort into like creating these cartoony characters.
Yeah.
Instead, we had to make sure that the game was competitively viable and a fair game, because you always risk, like a multiplayer game, it's more fun for one player than the other.
There's a balancing thing that has to occur.
Exactly. And the thing is, with like a single player game, you can always make the non-playable character, like the boss in our case, the donkey of the joke, if that makes sense. Like, we can always, make the game more enjoyable for the player. But when you have like two actual humans that both need to have fun fighting each other, where only one can be a victor, it's inherently like a very hard decision.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to focus on the characters, the story, and the gameplay rather than the balancing of it.
When I talked to you at PAX, you said that you got a lot of inspiration, and I'm guessing by you got a lot of inspiration, both you and Ludvig, I'm guessing, are inspired by American cartoons, you said?
Yes, especially like, for example, the older Disney animated movies, as well as Looney Tunes. Tom and Jerry is a big one. There's a lot of different cartoons that inspire us, and a lot of cartoons which we, it's a very fun, in quotes, job that we have, because we have so much fun when we make the game. And it's like we watch these cartoons and like, oh, this concept here, this animation was cool, could we use that for one of our moves? Some other like non-American cartoons, as well as, for example, I think it's called Treasure Island. It's the one with Dr. Livesey. There's a lot of inspirations from a lot of different, and even like more modern cartoons has also been inspiring. Not in the same way as the older ones, because in my opinion, like the older cartoons they're animated with like so high frame rate. They're so costly to make, and they feel so fluid. Whereas the modern ones have advantages of their own, but generally they're produced in a way where the actual animations aren't the focus, and it's more focused on the concepts behind it. One example is like Rick and Morty. I love that show, but it's animated in a different way where it's not as much focus on the movement as, let's say, the Beauty and the Beast or the Lion King.
Yeah, see, Rick and Morty, yeah. There's sort of a sticky wicket here with Justin Roiland being embroiled in controversy, so he was removed from the cast of Rick and Morty. Have you seen the latest season of Rick and Morty or no?
I did watch the first few episodes of I think I've seen 2 episodes, maybe 1. I'm glad the show is back, but I think I didn't really enjoy that episode. It was about the character that I really liked, but I thought it was kind of a weird story, and it was about this Poopy Butthole character.
Oh, Mr. Poopy Butthole, yes. The infamous Mr. Poopy Butthole.
Not to spoil, but I'm going to say one element of it, but it's like there's a predator involved in it. Like a predator, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Gotcha. I kind of lost interest if we're discussing the show as a whole. When it sort of jumped the shark for me was Pickle Rick.
It was season 3, I think.
I enjoyed some of the things where they took bits of references to other movies and shows. Are you familiar with the episode Raising Gazorp?
Yeah.
the episode where Morty gets the sex doll thing, and are you familiar with the movie that's referenced in that episode?
No, I don't think so.
The movie is called Zardoz. The whole episode sort of uses the Zardoz concept. It's a movie that Sean Connery was in. I think it was his next after he stopped being James Bond. At some point, look up the trailer for Zardoz, but it came out in 1974, and it had that stone floating head in the background. That's kind of what happened. You had the higher society, and the stone head transported them. It was an homage to that, but I was like the only one of my friends that knew that reference. And it's like some of those references are great because it's like, oh, I know this movie. This is making fun of this thing. And then when they started getting later on in the seasons, I think they started taking themselves a little too seriously, maybe in the writing, but I don't know. I'm still going to watch season 7, even though the voices are different. Does that bother you at all, the voices being different? Or do you watch it in Swedish so you don't know that it's really different? Do they have a Swedish regions?
No, it's English original.
Okay.
We consume like the media in, like for example, the American media in English American. It's almost a bit like, I guess it depends on like who you ask, but generally people would think it's a bit lame, reserved for maybe children to like see a movie dubbed to Swedish. Sometimes I like to watch a movie I've watched many times in a different language, because that way it almost becomes like a new movie. It's almost always the English version we watch here.
Yeah. We're talking about modern animations. Do you any Japanese sort of influenced, or any anime, or any kind of like that kind of style that you're into, or is it mostly American? Do you appreciate other animation from other places like your Studio Ghibli or things like that?
It depends a little bit who you ask, actually. Like if you ask me, as in, making big boy boxing, there's a few. And I think those might be quite apparent when you play the game that we referenced and inspired by. But it's a whole other question if you ask me, like as a, just a animation enjoyer. To be fair, like I only watch like, I guess, the mainstream animes. Like I have a few friends that, watch a lot of like animes that haven't even been subtitled to English and stuff like that, so there's like some quite extreme anime viewers. I'm not that, but one anime which I think is like one of the best like just media ever made is one called Death Note.
Oh yeah, Death Note, yeah.
And it's to be honest not the animations that does it. It's actually like quite like I remember I tried to like show some clips of that to Ludvig, and he was like, where's the animations? Like it's not really moving. It's the camera is moving, the characters aren't. Most of the time. It's quite static. But I think the story behind it and like the style of it, kind of gothic style it has, is so unique and so interesting. And actually, I prefer in this particular case, I really like the English dub, but usually I do prefer this Japanese version with English. But in this particular case, I think whoever dubbed it did an amazing job.
Is there a fully animated motion picture, it can be computer or otherwise, that's like your favorite animated feature? Because I have one that I want to talk about a little bit, but I'm not sure you're going to be familiar with it. Do you have a favorite animated movie?
I have a few. Like there's, I could probably tell you like 10 that are like equally my favorites.
Okay.
But I will give you, this is really hard, but maybe I really like Into the Spider-Verse.
That's a great contemporary one, I think.
Yes, it blew me out of the park when I saw it the first time. Because the thing is, I think it's when you see it today, it's still a really good movie. But when you saw it, when it released, it was a revolutionary picture. Because to be honest, I really like Disney projects, but I don't really like a lot of the newer Disney projects. I think they had even more magic when they did the like hand-drawn stuff, and the Pixar, like the golden age. But I think that Into the Spider-Verse really brought back the thunder for animations. Movies like Puss in Boots, the Puss in Boots 2 movie, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, the Turtle Mayhem movie. They're both like inspired by that project, and I think without that movie, these two movies would probably never have been made, or not this good.
Yeah. I have a favorite, but it goes back to the 80s, a movie that was called Rock and Rule. Like rock and roll, except rock and rule.
Oh, interesting. I have never seen this one.
This is a movie. This was a project that was kind of a failure. The company is Nelvana. They were started in 1971, and they did a whole bunch of television animation projects after this. However, this was their first full-length movie. They chose to make this movie over heavy metal. Were you familiar with the movie Heavy Metal? Based on the magazine.
No idea.
More adult. Let's just say adult animation. That's kind of what Heavy Metal was in the magazine section. I wouldn't call it pornography necessarily, but it did have cartoons that were not for children. Maybe they were taking something from sort of the
hentai.
Manga. That's what I was talking. Manga. No, not hentai. No.
I thought you're going to talk about adult stuff. I was like,
no tentacles. No, let's keep that away. Heavy Metal. It was more of an adult style movie. This movie, Rock and Rule, impacted me as a youngster. I must have been, when I saw this movie, I was probably like 14. Came out in 83, but I didn't see it in the rental shop until far later. Has a very unique style, but what really pulled me in was the music. It had so many different recognizable musical artists that kind of made up the soundtrack. And I don't know how many of these artists you know of, but there's Iggy Pop, Lou Reed, Cheap Trick, Debbie Harry from Blondie, and Earth, Wind and Fire. They did unique music for the movie specifically. It's such a great story about two musicians and one aging musician who wants to end the world, the final show, because he's such a power hungry kind of evil character. So he's looking for a specific voice that will call this demon from another dimension to destroy the world. And it just so happens this woman is sort of involved romantically with another character, and she disappears and they have to find her. And it's just I would highly recommend the movie to someone who appreciates animation, because it's just got such a wonderful soundtrack. It was a complete commercial failure. It was published by MGM United Artists in the States, but they put no money behind it. It was one of those ones where you've heard this story before. As a company, you can kill a project that you don't understand by just not publishing any kind of, promotional material or marketing it in a different way than what it actually is, so on and so forth. So, yeah, this was basically a commercial flop. But Nelvana as a company bounced back pretty spectacularly by doing a lot of animation for television programs and such. Pretty interesting. I would highly recommend checking out Rock and Rule if you can find it. I don't know if it's really even available here. There was like a special edition that came out, and now it's out of print anyway, but check it out, Rock and Rule. If you like rock music, definitely check it out. So that is my little, let me just see here. Where else? They did a whole bunch of stuff for Inspector Gadget. They were also they did the first Inspector Gadget, this Nelvana company, after failure of the movie. This was where they sunk all their money in, and it almost took down the company, but it did not. And also, Rock and Rule was all done the old-fashioned way. Their idea of computer graphics is laughable, but they do talk about computer animations in the making of part of the movie, which is just, you look at it and you go, not exactly computer animation, but they used techniques that they had to use a computer to control things in the environment and such. I say Titan AE. I don't know if you saw Titan AE, but I thought that was fabulous. Anything done by Don Bluth. Are you familiar with Don Bluth? He did the game Dragon's Lair, the game Space Ace, the Laserdisc games from back in the 80s. He's a very unique style. He also did the Rats of Nim.
There's a lot of different kind of these people that's like, has so much behind their back, so to say. Like they made all, like I just Googled his name now and I can see a lot of different projects that I've heard of and seen.
Yeah.
And Dragon's Lair is it's not. I mean, I guess it's a little bit of the same, but there's a lot of these old LucasArts games that people compare Big Boy Boxing to.
Oh, really?
This makes me feel like these old, the way they're animated and stuff. I've heard that multiple times, and that's quite interesting.
Like Day of the Tentacle, like Maniac Mansion, like that kind of.
Exactly, and the thing is, although I've heard of those projects, I know Ludvig has, in fact, never heard of those projects until, of course, I mentioned them. But we were never inspired by those titles. But people saw kind of a good compared those, which was quite interesting. So
yeah,
maybe there's something that we had in common with those games. Maybe we had unknowingly using, let's say, the same animation principles that they're following or something like that, which would be really cool.
Oh yeah, you know what? I didn't even put two and two together until you mentioned that. I'm thinking like your Maniac Mansion, like your Monkey Island, those types. It does intentionally or unintentionally feel like those types of animations in those point and click adventure games. But I'm guessing it's probably because a lot of those games were inspired by that kind of thing too. Like any of the Tim Schafer stuff that he worked on when he was at LucasArts. Not Grim Fandango. What was the other one? Oh, Full Throttle. Full Throttle has an animation style that I would feel would be possibly compared to the Big Boy Boxing style a little bit.
I was just going to say that Tim Schafer he's made a game called Psychonauts.
Yes. I
love both the original game and the Psychonauts 2 game, which is kind of a miracle that the second game even got released and then, that it's so good,
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've been working on it for a while, too. as far as when they got the crowdfunding for it.
I think they had a lot of trouble. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they had a lot of worrying development updates, which I'm very glad that the game got released, and I think it's one of, at least for that year, probably the best platformer.
Oh yeah,
it's such a creative game.
Even the first one, I remember playing that game, loving that game on the Xbox, even though it didn't get released through Microsoft, right? I think it's also an interesting story about a game that was dropped by Microsoft Studios is now, for the second version, now Double Fine is kind of under the Microsoft umbrella now, even though they dropped the publishing of the title and they had to go with, for the first game, some other publisher. Kind of an interesting sort of thing to see. Microsoft going, oh yeah, we want Double Fine. But they have done so many great games. Such a great concept and story, and just, yeah, I totally agree. Although I didn't like it as much as the very first, but it was amazing.
I almost wonder if the movie Inception was inspired by that concept, because this was this was basically Inception before Inception. And I'm wondering if Christopher Nolan was inspired by that idea, or if he independently got that idea.
I don't know. Christopher Nolan seems I don't know. Even if he did, he wouldn't admit it. I don't know if you listened to previous shows. One of my regular co-hosts, Andrew, has sort of a feud going on with Christopher Nolan, where he doesn't watch any Christopher Nolan movies. He just kind of is very anti-Christopher Nolan. But I talked to him about Tenet, and I said, you really need to see Tenet, Andrew. You really do. I know you have a problem with Christopher Nolan and his movies, but you got to see Tenet. Just see it. Did you see the movie Tenet?
I think Tenet is the movie I probably have rewatched the most times of any movie ever.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm very near to say, that's maybe one of my favorite movies ever, because it's such a mind-bending movie, which I had to watch it 3 times, I think, and watch YouTube videos that explained what actually happened before I actually understood. Obviously you enjoyed the movie on your first watch, but I don't think anyone can actually understand this kind of Rubik's Cube puzzle that they're putting out on the first attempt.
Oh yeah.
And I just thought that every time I see that movie, I'm like, how do I, because usually I think like this, when I see a movie, I see an animation, I do anything. I'm like, how can I turn this into a game, or at least, an idea for a boss fight?
Right.
But when I see the movie Tenet, I'm like, this is impossible to make to video game. It's just impossible to make time travel interactive. I'd have to invent time travel,
Right.
And it's not some bullshit time travel. It's like this closed loop, right? It's
not really traditional time travel. It's time flowing in 2 different directions simultaneously, but it is time travel when you break it down, right? But it's just done in a way that's unique.
Exactly. It's like these movies like Back to the Future, classic movies. I watched them, it feels like thousands of times, but in those movies, it's obviously up for debate, but it's not really like time traveling. It's more like parallel dimensions or universes,
Right.
But in Tenet, it made me feel like, this is what real time travel is, if we remove, any type of alternate universe theories and stuff like that. It feels like Tenet would be the result of time traveling existing. It would, this is how it would look.
Yeah.
Obviously, they made it very cinematic with the backwards walking, and I think that's also just such a, I don't know, a very simple concept, right? And it's such a interesting visual, and I don't know, everything about it was interesting.
That whole fight sequence was amazing in the terminal, the airplane. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
I also have a special connection to that movie. This isn't meant to be a sad thing at all. I saw that movie the day I was told my father had passed away. My friend Michaela said, I got to take you out to see a movie. You've wanted to see Tenet, so let's go see Tenet. And it was just the right movie for me to see at that time. It's like my dad and I talked about, because he enjoyed Inception so much. I didn't like Inception because the main character in Inception, he was not a good guy. He was a thief.
Yeah.
That's what he was. And I just didn't have a connection, nor did I care whether he was inside a dream, inside a dream, inside a dream. He was an evil guy, so whatever happened to him, I had no connection to that character. Whereas in Tenet, you actually do have a connection with that character. He feels like he's a good-hearted character. So something about Tenet just grabbed me, and I just loved that movie. Just such a great movie.
The thing is, I agree with you on exactly all of that. The interesting thing is, like, the common critique I hear about Tenet is, the other way around. They compare Tenet to Inception, and they're like, Inception has better characters and Tenet doesn't. But I actually recently rewatched both Inception and Tenet with my father as well, and he agrees with me and you there with like, Inception is good, but is this guy like he's basically a bad guy, right? So, and with Tenet, it's I guess like me and yours opinion is in the minority, but a lot of people thought that the character was too nameless. He was he was just called the protagonist, and he didn't have any sort of character to him. But that wasn't really the point. Where like first off, I thought that he did have character to him, but the point of the movie was this like Rubik's Cube puzzle, which was like, how does all these like threads tie together? And I think they did a beautiful job of tying it together. And I think the character Neil, was like that, I thought that was a very interesting character, and the dynamic they had, which is like when you see the movie the first time, you don't understand, like you cannot see it through the eyes of the protagonist.
Right.
But the second time you watch the movie, you see it through the perspective of Neil.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting. For me, like it almost felt like a game. Like the game was figure out what the plot is. And there's a few other movies that's done that, but the annoying thing with this, which I think is why it's I can't get that movie off my mind, is because I can't see how you can truly make an interactable game like this movie. It feels a lot like a video game because there's a protagonist, a unnamed protagonist. It's almost like a video game protagonist. There's no way you can make this to a game.
Well, the other thing I was going to mention with your unnamed protagonist and playing a game, you are learning things about what's happening along with the protagonist. That's what makes it great. It's because you and he are learning about what's going on exactly at the same time. It's like you know as much as he does when you start. So that's why he's also relatable. Not only is he's trying to figure this out and you're along the ride with him, you can relate to him because you're exactly in the same position, which also I think is sort of like, how do you make this into a video game sort of thing? Because it's like you are the unnamed protagonist in the video games too, right? So it's like very interesting.
Yeah.
So do you have any closing thoughts on the word animate other than buy our game because it's awesome?
Yeah, well, yeah. So wishlist our game on Steam. It's available there to be wishlisted, and there's a demo. And if you follow us on Twitter at Real Soupmasters, you'll get updates on when we release a new demo of the game.
Yes, and then also I forgot to ask you about the origin of the name of the company, Soupmasters. Can we save that for the next time you're on? I would love to have you on for another word at some point in the future. Maybe closer to the actual release of the game, if that's cool. And then we can talk about where Soupmasters came from, because that is a fascinating sort of, like, where did you come up with that name? But let's save that for later.
Let's save that, but I will give a slight tease to it.
Okay.
It has something to do with my start in game development / programming in Minecraft.
Okay.
So it has something to do with that.
Okay. You should check out the episode I did with Andrew. Lately, we've been doing a Pringles thing. We were talking about Pringles during one of the episodes, and he bought the suspicious stew flavored Pringles, which you will know from Minecraft. They put out an American flavor called Suspicious Stew Pringles.
Oh, what? That is so awesome.
Yeah, he did a tasting of the Suspicious Stew flavored Pringles on one of our episodes. I'll send that episode link. He didn't get any buff from it, unfortunately. I don't think in the real world you get a buff from the Suspicious Stew flavored Pringles, but thank you so much, Martin, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope you will consider being on another show later on, closer to when you actually release.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you so much as well for the conversation.
Oh, yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, audience, for joining us on this week's episode of the Too Vague Podcast. My name is Ben.
And once again, my name is Martin from Soupmasters.
And we've been your hosts. Have a wonderful night. Bye.
Bye.